How's it going, folks? I'm Matt. Welcome to Fotosyntech and another episode of Meet the Industry. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have our first returning guest on the show, Zachary from Niwa. Zachary, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having part two as we continue this journey together, and happy to be here to talk to the community on your platform.
Absolutely. And you know, the last video that we did, it did exceptionally well. The viewers really loved it. So totally stoked to have you back here to talk about a new feature. But before we get into that, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Guys, if you like what I'm doing here on the show, Patreon link below. You can support me that way. And if you want to join my Discord, just reach out to me via email. That's photosyntech1@gmail.com. Love to have you on the server with us. That being said, Zachary, new features, Niwa Grow Hub. Before we talk about that, though, why don't you tell me a little bit about the Grow Hub, what it is, what it does, for those who may have not seen our first discussion?
No, of course. Thank you. So the Niwa Grow Hub is an automated hardware outlet really catered towards the grow tent or grow room and really for the home grower. The goal is to create a lot of flexibility. So you have 4 outlets where you can decide which piece of equipment that you want to connect and sync with, and allows you to really determine if you want a LED or a fan, or then months later you want to switch it out and you don't need it anymore and you want to go hydro, for example, you can update your outlets. And then you have the sensor system that's built in that allows you to get your temperature, humidity, which also get you your new feature is the VPD, and along with the light levels. And the goal is to create a versatile product that we can build off of.
Awesome. Talk a little bit more about the specific devices that you can control, and are there any limitations?
Yeah, so we are allowing people to sync up 7 basic pieces of equipment. So you have your LED, watering pump, humidifier, dehumidifier, AC, fan, and obviously if you need a heater, and certain, especially up in the Great White North, right? So those are the 7 that you can sync up. So you can't deal with CO2 at this moment, although we understand that's an important piece of equipment that some people want to measure. But those are the 7 that it comes with in the software that you can basically establish which outlet is one of those pieces of equipment.
Definitely important. And automation in the grow room is so key to being able to dial things in successfully and have the best grow possible. And as we talk about dialing things in, of course, you already touched on it, VPD, vapor pressure deficit, for those who don't know. And let's talk about that. Why is VPD so important, Zachary?
Yeah, to be quite frank, we were experiencing a lot of polarizing feelings about VPD. As you know, a lot of growers have different ways of doing things, an old school, new school type of growers out there. And some people are like, oh, it's okay. Some people are like, I must have it. I must know. Right. And so it's really a formula, calculating the combination of temperature, humidity, which gives you the understanding of how your plants could best perform. And that's kind of how it's based off of. And for example, if you get to the desired level of the VPD, then you really give your plants the ability to absorb nutrients at the most optimal level. Kind of similar to how humans are, right? After you work out, you want to have protein. You're not going to go straight to fast food, at least we hope. And it leaves the ability for the body or the plant to really be at that optimal state. And when you do that right, and this is from growers telling us that your harvest could be better, stronger, and potentially even bigger. So that's kind of where foundation VPD. There's a lot of information and a lot of reasons why people do it, but that's one of the leading examples.
Yeah, I've talked about this on my show before, that VPD is really about dialing in that system and thinking about the plant as a water pump. When you have the absolute perfect temperature and perfect humidity, that plant's going to be working in its optimum state, where it's pulling up nutrients like you'd mentioned, pulling up water, exhausting the way it should be. It's working perfectly. But What about the different stages of plant growth and whatnot? Am I doing the same VPD per stage?
So for those that are familiar, you have to create a grow recipe. And so within that recipe, you can decide up to 7 stages to have. Obviously, with certain plants that we grow, 3 or 4 is usually the norm. So within that stage, you can do with your lighting and your watering schedule, you can determine at that stage the time frame and obviously the VPD target that you want to be at. So stage 1 is the first week, and stage 2, for example, is week 2 through 4. You can determine what that climate needs to be at. So yes, you can basically create a stage per cycle of the plant. And you can do that and customize in your app. And when you create the grow recipe, yeah.
Perfect. So step-by-step control the entire way. Specifically, how does the Niwa monitor VPD?
Yeah, and so, in the dashboard, I'll go beginning to end. In the dashboard, you'll be able to see the levels in which they are at the real time, right? So obviously you can refresh that and get the real time of your VPD reading, your dew point, and of course your humidity and temperature. We don't exclude those. We're only adding to it. And then as you progress to the stats section, which is really where your data is, that's where you can see historically what's happening, right? And so you could do 6 hours, 12 hours, which is what we've found to be the norm, or even a week or a month. And that's the way that you can monitor VPD in particular, and also the other parameters.
Awesome. And just maintaining that full control. But tell me then, why is Niwa better at doing this than, say, the other VPD monitors?
That's a good question. And there are a lot of great products out there. And, I don't want to be the one to say this brand is bad or good or great. But our goal is really to create a dynamic platform where VPD is working harmoniously with all the other parameters and also the different pieces of equipment that you have synced to the platform. And so for us to give the ability to integrate equipment and monitoring using data and an app where you can see it remotely is probably the most advantageous kind of the collectiveness that we look at. So, and again, there are options out there that do VPD. I think the way we look at it is that the platform is dynamic because it integrates monitoring and the ability to incorporate your piece of equipment.
Yeah, and that's what really attracts me to the Grow Hub in general is it's the monitoring and control all in one. Anybody familiar with my show who's ever seen my very first episode was building a grow room controller, and I certainly understand the difficulty involved and the amount of work research that you have to do, as well as maintaining that quality level of component and whatnot. How do you guys go about selecting your components? What sort of testing do you do? How do I know that the Grow Hub is going to last 6 months, a year, long term?
Yeah, and obviously durability and reliability, is everything. I mean, it doesn't matter how sexy your outlet is, if it doesn't have if it's not reliable, durable, it doesn't matter how it looks and how it's designed. And so for all the features, for those that are unaware, every feature that we put out is months of testing, right? Because like things we buy in our everyday life, whether it be a piece of apparel or something, you can get it, you can test it. I don't like it, throw it out. But when we're dealing with biology, right? So if you're like in the lab or if you're in the gardening world, like we are, you got to basically test those changes over a fair period of time that is reflective of what those customers are doing, right? And so for us, when we incorporate a feature that either inhibits or activates some type of the monitoring aspects or even the controlling, we do about a 2-3 month test to start mimicking at least some long term. Of course, some things have been testing since we started the inception of this idea over a year ago, and so those things have been tried and true. But new features, I mean, they're definitely, we try to mimic a good portion of what a harvest time would be. And even though when they're released, we still do testing, right? So it gets to a certain point where it can get released, but it doesn't just end there and say, oh, it's good, and just like kind of wash your hands of it. It continues because there'll be some add-ons to that feature. There may be a bug that comes unexpected, right? So, and that's kind of how we approach these new features. And to the equipment piece, granted, we want our LEDs to last, years, right? In some of the equipment. And that goal is to extrapolate what we've learned and continue that on.
That's a great answer. So then, in regards to VPD specifically, how is the Grow Hub maintaining that? I mean, you talked about testing, doing a lot of work in the lab and whatnot, but can you speak to the specifics on how it's keeping things in check?
Yeah, and that's why we offer in the recipe 3 different ways, right? So, obviously there's the humidity and the temperature can equal the VPD, like as I mentioned, it's a formula. So in that recipe, you can exclude one of those parameters, right? It could be you're doing temperature and VPD and using humidity as your target and the inverse. So that gives you kind of a dynamic way of approaching your monitoring. And then after that's been decided upon from the grower, then you have your dashboard and you still get those readouts. So for example, VPD is shown on your dashboard, which you can see on on your phone. And then you also have the other parameters. So like your other parameters are not in the dark, right? So like, listen, most growers have to have a little bit of a DIY and a little bit of mathematics as part of the process. So you can kind of challenge those numbers to make sure that they are what they are, right? And that's kind of the best way for you to do it, because the data is there, and then you can start taking a little bit of action of kind of double checking that, right? And that's hard to do on the back end because everyone has different goals that they set for their desired parameter.
Of course.
But once you've decided that, then you can kind of cross reference them, you know.
So then if I'm making a change, if I want to raise VPD, lower VPD, temperature, humidity, whatever, doesn't matter. What sort of time frame would I expect? I mean, I know that as a grower, I can make a change and I've got to wait some period of time, but is it more hours or days for a change to be affected? And is there any tips or tricks along that?
No, that's a great question. So say we have a recipe live and running. You have a recipe live and running. You'll have to pause the recipe and make your adjustments, which we hope to change in the future. But for now, you have to, basically pause your recipe, make your adjustments, save the changes. As soon as you save the changes, your system is already listening to those new goals, those new desired parameters. Now, of course, say your humidity levels was 70 and you want it to be 60. Well, the environment is also nature, right? So it'll take some time to adjust, and then your equipment to be like, oh, I want it to be 60. Then I got to make some changes on how and when I turn on and off, right? So obviously it'll be a couple hours, or I mean, in some cases, depending on where you are with the temperature in your open environment, to get to that that ideal parameter or desired goal. So there'll probably be some hours for that to kind of get to the goal of the grower. But instantly it will change in the system, but it'll take some time for the actual environment to be reflective of that.
Of course. And of course, the size of your space is going to have a large part to play with that. I know my big grow room would definitely take a lot longer than my little veg tent that I have here beside me. Yeah. Now, let me paint a little bit of a scenario for you, because this is something that concerns me in general about connected devices. I have a smart plug sitting in my tent next to me, and when that smart plug loses wireless connectivity, it doesn't necessarily follow its own recipe. How does Grow Hub deal with this if it loses wireless connectivity? How does it stay permanently connected? Do I have some sort of concern with my devices? Because the problem that I've had with this smart plug is it loses its Wi-Fi and then it doesn't turn on or turn back off when it should. How would you deal with that?
No, that's a really important question. I was just experiencing this with a grower 2 days ago about the exact same question that you asked. And so the Niwa has like two brains, right? So when you build your grow recipe, that is to control your equipment and also to make sure that the sensors are communicating with that equipment so things can turn on and off as needed. Now, say the Wi-Fi goes out. Your one brain, which is controlling the equipment, the grow recipe, continues. The problem is when there's no Wi-Fi, you won't be able to go to your app and get the live reading because it can't get signal and all that. But your control is still happening, and it's actually still collecting data, but you just can't see it because it needs the Wi-Fi to communicate to you. But the other brain is still working. Now, say the Wi-Fi gets back on after a power outage or what have you, the Niwa will reconnect automatically, and then you'll be able to get the live data. But that's the second brain. But that main brain, which is control, will keep going with the Wi-Fi. Now, if the power's out, well, then, there's not much that it needs to be going to be doing at that point. But when the Wi-Fi is out, you have at least one of the brains working and continuing executing the grow recipe.
Redundancy is such a beautiful thing in the grow room, especially for something so critical as your automation. So peace of mind. Now, I know the cost on the Niwa Grow Hub is $199 US. Discount code below if you want to save a few bucks on that. But with this new feature, is there any additional charge? Do I have to get a new app? Is there an additional fee?
No, for the VPD offering, we're just stacking on what we already have. Again, not taking away what was given before, which is the temperature, humidity, and light level. We're just adding another monitoring capability. So there's no additional cost or no subscription fee for this offering that we have in these features. And a lot of the features that we have in the pipeline is not going to be an additional cost. And so, we're just trying to build on top of that existing platform, because when we built the Grow Hub, we built it on, now what was released in January, of course, is not what it is now, but the goal is that we're like adding to that stack and there'll be no additional cost.
Fantastic. Pay one fee, get all these fantastic features, plus more to come. Well, yes. Zachary, you've been stellar chat with you, sir. And guys, if you haven't seen our first chat, I encourage you to go back and watch it. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Any thoughts you want to leave us with? Maybe something else coming up?
We definitely are trying to work on some manual control where you can have a little more customization with the equipment and how it interacts with the recipe. That's definitely something that is being tested now. Like I mentioned earlier, it takes a couple of months to make sure that, those are actually being executed properly before we give it to the grower. But I think the last thing is, and like I just mentioned, the conversation I had 2 days ago, which was about an hour with the grower. Please tell us the good, bad, and the ugly. The collective growing experience, nothing compared to collective growing experience of those that are, using our product. So people use it for different reasons and for different plants, but we really want to know what they're looking for because, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And so we kind of need to hear that. And even if it's bad, like it's like, it's good because like the call I had 2 days ago, about 40 minutes it was good, but there's definitely always like 20 minutes of like, picking apart what needed to be improved. And we want to hear that. So obviously you can email us at founders@getniwa.com or even our support email. But we basically want to hear that from the community. And that's really one of my things, like the last thing I like to say.
Fantastic. And getniwa.com is the website, so you can head there, check out all their fantastic products. And Zachary, thank you so much for joining us today. Absolutely appreciate having you on the show. And when you have something new to talk about, love to have you back.
Great. Thank you.
All right, guys, go check out the Niwa Grow Hub. Fantastic piece of gear. We out.